Hi, welcome to valuationpodcast.com, a podcast and video series about all things related to business and valuation. My name is Melissa Gragg, and I'm a financial mediator and business valuation expert in St. Louis, Missouri. Today, I have the pleasure and privilege of speaking with Kirk Michie in San Diego, California, and he is the founder of Candor Advisors. For more than 30 years, he has worked with entrepreneurs, closely held business owners, and high net worth families to achieve their strategic planning, liquidity, investment, and legacy objectives. Today, we're going to talk about using valuation metrics to strengthen the seller negotiations in M&A or mergers and acquisitions. And I welcome you, Kirk, to the podcast.
Thanks, Melissa. I'm glad to be with you.
I've talked about this in some capacity to other investment bankers and business brokers. But right now, the deals that I'm seeing, because of course I'm doing valuations and I'm doing strategic valuations. So companies are valuing every year to just see like partners buying in or out, or, building up the management team by providing some sort of compensation of ownership. And so they're knowing where they are in a valuation standpoint and where they want to be, right? They understand some of their EBITDA. So what they're getting is a knock on the door. They're getting somebody coming to them, either a close competitor or a close friend competitor, right? They see them at the association. They talk to them and like, hey, what are you doing? You buying things? And they're starting to do these deals of like, well, I'm a founder and you're a founder, and we could do this a lot. Like, let's not get everybody involved. And we know some of our value metrics, when we started talking about this podcast, we were like, okay, but the valuation metrics, right? Because I'm telling clients not to get a full valuation report, because you just need to know like your range. What's your reasonable range of like, how high do you think you could get it? How low is it going to be? And that's still going to be based on cash flow, risk, and at all times kind of getting to an LOI or a letter of intent or a letter of interest. And so in most situations, I'm like, hey, let's not do this valuation and put it in writing and then have somebody call you and say, hey, can I have that in due diligence? And then you look like the jerk for not giving it to them. How can sellers actually use some of the valuation metrics as leverage to push for a stronger LOI, a better purchase price? And really, the metrics in valuation is cash flow and its risk, or market multiples and things like that. Like, how are you seeing a business owner should be prepared when they're going into this situation?
Yeah, it's a great question, because what we see on the unsuccessful end of things is that the sellers that it doesn't work out for argue with the market. They won't acknowledge that, at my level of, revenue, EBITDA, customer concentration, unique IP differentiation, the market is paying 6 times, but you don't understand, my thing is more of a jewel and I deserve 9 times. And usually that's either ego or the need to have more money to be able to retire the way they want to retire, right? So acknowledging that the market decides on the valuation, and no, you shouldn't take it personally when the market tells you that, hey, look, you're a 6 times business. Y'all shouldn't take it personally when somebody calls your business a nice lifestyle business, because it probably is. Now, can it be more than that? Definitely. And one of the things you do, or, we coach people to do, is to sort of say, look, if the valuation range for businesses like yours, because we've gone and looked in the databases and found precedent transactions that are relevant and that we can find information about, and we know who those buyers are, so we can create a buyer universe. Let's reach out to those people. If you're okay in the range, what our job will be as your investment banker, as your financial representative out there talking to all these unfamiliar people and vetting them, is we can create some competitive tension to make sure that, we can at least try and drive the high end of the valuation spectrum. But we also tell people that, listen, understand that the way great negotiation works when it comes down to smart merger and acquisitions or buyout discussion is seller's price, buyer's terms, buyer's price, seller's terms. every single deal point needs to hinge around those things, right? So if the buyer agrees to pay you 8 times, even though they really wanted to pay you 7 times, well, then you're probably going to have to accept more structure and get less cash, right? And if you say, no, I'm going to push back on that, you're violating kind of the social contract that you go into when you've got a willing buyer and seller, which is to say, well, he met you on price, so you need to meet him on terms. Now, if he comes back and says, I'm going to do 60% cash at close and 20% equity roll and 20% earnout, you can say, I'm willing to do earnout or equity roll, but I'm not willing to do both. And so now you've basically continued the, buyer's price, seller's terms, seller's price, buyer's terms. Then they come back and they say, okay, we want an EBITDA-based earnout. And you say, well, listen, you're buying the majority of the company. You're going to control the expenses. So I can no longer control EBITDA. Why don't we stipulate that this is where the multiple of revenue is, and we'll do a revenue-based earnout. I can live with the earnout for 40%, but it needs to be revenue-based because I can no longer control EBITDA, right? And if the buyer really, really wants the company, and the seller really, really thinks that this is the right legacy for their company, they're matching, the seller's reason for selling and the buyer's thinking about what's going to happen with the company, then you get to a transaction without anybody yelling at each other or pounding the table. I mean, sure, let the lawyers, make faces at each other on the Zoom calls and, harumph under their breath and whatever else. But if the principals kind of come together around those things and there's advisors are giving them good guidance there, deals get done. And so the founders can use an awareness of the valuation of the marketplace to drive those terms.